Hello and welcome to episode 48 of the Mr. Douglas Sports Show. I am your host as always, Corey Douglas, and I am recording this late Sunday night. Mother's Day has passed. I had a great day with my mom. Always appreciated what she's done for me, and shout out to all the moms out there doing their thing, especially the ones that are doing it on their own. But this episode is going to be a little bit different than I planned. I really plan to dive into some NFL, NBA stuff, what's going on with the Mavs, because they are rolling right now. They beat Cleveland tonight. Luka gets ejected due to a low blow on Colin Sexton, but they still win by 20 plus points, and they currently sit at the 5 seed, and they are inching real close to making sure they get out of the tiebreaker or the play-in game. But what I want to talk about on this episode is I went out to the ballpark on Saturday night, Seattle Mariners versus the Texas Rangers. And this was my first experience to go out to the new Globe Life Field as a fan and not as media. So, as you know, the Rangers opened Globe Life Field last season, but because of the circumstances, there was no fans allowed in the building. But I was fortunate enough to go out there as media with Dallas Sports Fanatic a couple of times last season. And all you can really judge on or make judgments on is the ballpark itself, but you don't really get a good feel for the environment with no fans. And then when you're sitting in a press box, you don't get the full experience that way either. So Saturday night, I went out there for the first time this season as a fan. They had the Star Wars tickets, $5.04. So me and my boy Mike made the trip out to Arlington. And before I get to, I guess, how excited I am with the Rangers, because it hasn't been that way in a couple of years, I do want to touch on the ballpark just a little bit. So I love the old ballpark, Globe Life Park. I love it. I know during the summer it was brutal, and even sometimes late into the fall it was brutal just sitting out in the heat. And I know I've had a personal experience of sitting down the third baseline at Globe Life Park on an afternoon game, and it's miserable, no doubt. So I don't have any complaints with them moving across the street to Globe Life Field with the retractable roof. However, I do have, I guess, 3 thoughts on the stadium itself, just based off my experience on Saturday night. So number 1 is it gets really loud in there. I love that aspect of it. I remember at the time GM John Daniels was talking about how they really feel like when the Rangers start playing really important games, once they get out of this rebuild phase, that electricity in the stadium is going to be something like a real life basketball game in the playoffs. And I got the feel of that Saturday night. Total capacity is about 40,300 people. On Saturday night they had about 26,000, but it was extremely loud. And I draw it into comparison from, I guess, the last playoff game I went to in 2011. It was game 2 of the ALCS against the New York Yankees. The Rangers had just blown a game in game 1, like a 5-run lead. And I mean, these are the big bad Yankees at that point. They had won the World Series a couple years before. And like I said, they're the Yankees. So you're thinking, all right, so this team that just went to the World Series in 2010 in the Rangers, they lost to the Giants. And then you have the Yankees coming back. And you're not sure how the Rangers are going to respond in that moment. Rangers end up winning the game, but I think the most exciting part of that was just how loud and how raucous the crowd was during that game. And it was real comparable to what I experienced Saturday night. So that's number 1. It gets extremely loud in there. I'm excited for this next phase of Rangers baseball once they can finally get to the point where they can start playing more important games and really be a legit contender, not only for the AL West title, but for, ALCS titles, and then eventually hopefully a World Series title. The second thing is I feel like this new field or this new ballpark lacks some personality. And what I mean by personality is So at the old ballpark, there's just, I'm just gonna point out 3 things that you just notice right off the bat, whether you turn on the game or you're watching on TV or you're at the ballpark. There's 3 things that you're automatically gonna notice. Number 1 was the left field scoreboard. The tall wall, you know, if you see that, that's the ballpark in Arlington. Number 2, Greens Hill in center field. Yeah, there's St. Louis has a similar concept there, but you know just from years and years and years of watching the Rangers that that's going to be there. Third thing, and this is probably maybe the most, I guess, noteworthy thing of them all, is the home run porch in right field, where the all-you-can-eat seats are. You recognize when you see that, that's the ballpark in Arlington. Now with the new ballpark, you don't have those special features that you can just turn on a game and be like, all right, they're playing in Arlington. That's where the Rangers play. You just don't have those. Now what the Rangers did do is they made the dimensions around the outfield to honor certain Rangers. So like the 326, that's honoring the best manager in Rangers history that I know of, and that's Johnny Oates. The 407 in center field, that's honoring Pudge, the best Ranger of all time. You have a certain dimension that's 410, honoring Michael Young. You have, you know, a dimension where the last 2 numbers are 34, honoring Nolan Ryan and what he's done, not only as a player, but what he did as part of the baseball operations staff with John Daniels back when the Rangers were going to back-to-back World Series. But those little details like that, the casual fan's not going to be able to turn on and be like, okay, yeah, that 310 is for Michael Young. That 326 is for Johnny Oates. That 407 out there in center field, that's for, you know, Pudge. They're not going to be able to turn on the game and recognize that, as to where with the old ballpark you had those certain dimensions that you could really, you know, kind of relate to and be able to point out, you know, immediately. And the third thing with the ballpark is I like the ballpark better when the roof is open versus when the roof is closed. Now, this is, like I said, this is one game, and I haven't experienced a game as a fan with the roof closed. And I'm not one of the baseball purists that says, oh, baseball must be played outside. It's not baseball if it's played indoors. I'm not one of those fans because I've sat out in the afternoon game in Texas heat and been miserable. And I know there's some people out there like, it's not that bad, you know, just whatever. No, they're lying to you. That sitting out in 100-degree heat in the summer in Texas, you are miserable. And I do like the one aspect of, if it is 110 degrees, you don't have to think twice about going to a game because the roof will be closed, even though I like it better when the roof is open. So yeah, I mean, those are just my 3 quick thoughts on the ballpark. I'm sure there will be plenty more games that I go to and plenty more games where I'll have an opportunity to continue developing my opinion of the stadium. But just first initial reaction is I like the roof open at the new stadium, and I appreciate having a retractable roof so I don't have to think twice about going to games, and it gets really loud in there, and I think that might be the best part of having the roof closed once the Rangers start playing important games. So speaking of playing important games, this season for the Rangers, to me, coming into the season, was a complete wash. So my expectations coming into the season were very, very, very low. I was of the opinion that the Rangers didn't really have a direction as far as where they were going with the franchise. I mean, they didn't have any players that I thought were going to be long-term pieces that you could build upon when the Rangers start eventually, hopefully, winning again. But through 36 games, the Rangers are 18-18, and they're, I believe, 3.5 games out of first place behind the Oakland A's. And I'm just going to be honest with you. The Rangers, the last couple of seasons, have been almost unwatchable. For those reasons I just laid out a couple minutes ago. But this year it's different. And I can honestly say that I'm enjoying Rangers baseball again. And I think a lot of it has to do with, I actually see, you know, some pieces that are coming together and they're building. So I just want to shout out a couple of Rangers players that I've been impressed with and what kind of is making the Rangers experience a lot better for me this season. So the first guy is Isaiah Kiner-Falefa. So last year during the shortened season, Kiner-Falefa played third base, phenomenal defender, wins the Gold Glove. But this offseason, the Rangers trade Elvis Andrus to the Oakland A's for Chris Davis, who just made his debut this past weekend. And at the time, like I said on a couple of pods before, a couple of shows before, is that I had a real attachment to Elvis Andrus because he's been the Rangers shortstop for the last 12 years before this season. So when he got traded to Oakland, I kind of felt a way about that. Especially because at the time that they made the trade, Rougned Odor was still on the team. And the only reason he was still on the team is because he punched Jose Bautista. And he got his contract, but he never lived up to it. So I felt some type of way about, okay, you're going to treat a guy that's been here for so long, was part of the greatest Rangers teams as far as playoff success and team history, and you just ship him off for, to a division rival at that. But when the Rangers did that, that freed up the shortstop position for Isaiah Kiner-Falefa to take over at shortstop. And he's been really impressive. And I can honestly sit here today, sitting here on Mother's Day 2021, and say that trading Elvis Andrus was the right move to free up the spot. And I think my favorite quote that I've seen came from over the weekend from Isaiah. And basically what he said was, and this is quote, "We've shown some great things, but we've got a lot to work on. We're playing together and we want to stay here. We want to be Michael Young and Ian Kinsler. We want to show the organization that we are capable and that we are options. And the only way to do that is to go out and prove it." And he's talking about himself, and the next guy I'm going to talk about is Nick Solak, who plays second base. He was acquired in a trade from the Tampa Bay Rays a couple of seasons ago. And he got off to a real slow start in 2021, but he has turned it on as of late. And I think the reason that is my favorite quote is because I look at that as, number one, it's a guy that takes pride in being a leader. It's a guy that embraces being a Texas Ranger. And it shows a guy that's not afraid of taking on that challenge. And he's a guy that is going to work. I mean, this dude came in a couple years ago and was playing all over the diamond. I mean, he was playing every position except pitcher, basically. You throw him at first, you throw him at second, you throw him at short, you throw him at third. And no matter how much you throw at him, he's up for the challenge. So I love Isaiah Kiner-Falefa for that. And, he's turning into a piece that I can see being here long term. Like I said, Nick Solak, I touched on him. He was acquired a couple years ago, Tampa Bay Rays. I love him. He's another guy that he just grinds. He grinds at bats. He just grinds out there on the field. He plays hard. And he's a guy that I can actually see, being part of this organization long term. My third player I want to shout out is Adolis Garcia. So this guy is a guy that I compare in a lot of ways to Nelson Cruz when he really took off in his career as a Texas Ranger. He's a guy that for different circumstances had kind of been there, been through the minors, been to the majors in some capacity, not really been the most successful. You go down, you refine your approach at the plate, and then you come back and show the results at a major league level. And that's exactly what Adolis Garcia has done. He leads all rookies in home runs. He leads all rookies in RBIs. And he's a guy that's shown repeatedly that he is not afraid of the moment. He's hit 2 or 3 game leading home runs and extra innings. He's made a couple of defensive plays that saved the game, including on Saturday night on a crazy play in the 9th inning to send the Rangers to one game of under 500. And then on Sunday he comes back, breaks the game open with a 3-run home run, adds 5 RBIs, so he has 9 home runs for the season. And the joy and the spirit and the swagger he plays with is really relatable to, I think, all fans. I think when I was out there Saturday, he probably had the second loudest ovation from the fans behind Joey Gallo. That says a lot to me because he hasn't been here that long. He didn't even start the season on the Major League roster. So I love him. He's probably my favorite player, along with Isaiah Kiner-Falefa and Nick Solak. And then the fourth and final guy, I guess I got to shout out because Dane Dunning put on an absolute show on Sunday afternoon. 10 strikeouts in 5 innings. And he's another guy that the Rangers acquired in a trade this offseason when they sent Lance Lynn off to the Chicago White Sox. So, I mean, there's just a lot to like with this team. They're enjoyable to watch. And I'm enjoying Rangers baseball again. And some of that same joy that those early, 2010, 2011 teams, and even 2012 to a certain degree, the joy that those teams play with, I see the team, that this 2021 Rangers team doing the same thing. And that's not to say that they're going to immediately be World Series contenders, but this could be like the 2009 team where you start gaining traction, you start finding your pieces, and then when the Rangers are supposedly going to be open to spending money this offseason, you might be able to add a piece or two that really pushes you over the hump. And, who knows, you might end up winning the division again. But I'm going to wrap this up. I just wanted to shout out the Texas Rangers, and I am excited to watch Texas Rangers baseball again. And, when I release this, they will be in San Francisco taking on the Giants, who are actually in first place in the NL West. So that's another good test for a team that's actually played better on the road to this point. But I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. Like I said, I'm going to wrap this up. I just wanted to come on here and just really shout out the Rangers. I will be back later this week with some NBA talk, NFL talk. Let's really break down the Mavs and get into the excitement over there. But until next time, salute.